Hey guys, it's that time of week again, getting ready for our regular study with great folks at the Assisted Living Center. Miss them all, miss you all, and can't wait till we can gather in the flesh again. So much going on. I'm watching the news last night, and these mobs are tearing apart cities all over the country. We even had problems this past weekend right here in Charleston. Awful. Devastating. Where do you take refuge? What do you do? We've talked about Psalm 11 where David asked what good people do when the foundations are being destroyed, and the answer was look up, God's in his temple. Ben there talked about that. He is in control and we can trust him. It's interesting, several times since the coronavirus was revealed and everything started to change, I've heard from different people, Psalm 91 is where I go. Last night I was watching the news, and one of the newscasters mentioned read Psalm 91. And I thought, it's interesting because we're only a few days into the month, and the first of the month would have put Psalm 91 on the docket if we were reading through the Psalms, and it had been the third time we got to the first of the month. Anyhow, all of that being said and done, Psalm 91 is a great place to take refuge. Let me read from the beginning a bit of that passage. Okay, Psalm 91. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. The first verse of the psalm, he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty, is thematic. It tells us what the rest of the psalm is going to be all about. As soon as the psalmist proclaims that, though, he says, I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. He's proclaiming his own faith and commending faith to us. The first practical application of all this comes in the form of the question, is Jesus Christ your Lord and God? Have you placed your faith in Jesus Christ, in his death and resurrection? Have you been born again? Because unless that is the case, you won't benefit for the promises that follow. What are they? Well, let's take a look. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you'll find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. Wow, what promises those are. God will be our shelter, our shadow. He'll be our fortress, our refuge. These are given to us by God. They're promises that he will not forget. But yet, are they for all believers, or are there any qualifications? Charles Spurgeon thinks so. Listen to what he says. He says, the blessings here are promised not for all believers, but for those who live in close fellowship with God. Every child of God looks towards the inner sanctuary and the mercy seat, yet all do not dwell in the most holy place. They run to it at times, enjoy occasional approaches, but they do not habitually reside in his mysterious presence. So here's the second application. And again, it comes in the form of a question, which is, do you live in fellowship with God? Are you spending your time with him? Do you rest in the shadow of the Almighty? Is he your habitual dwelling place. The psalm is written to encourage us to trust him and cling to him in all circumstances. Are you doing that? If so, these promises are for you. Having explained or stated his own personal faith in God, the psalmist now commends that faith to us and takes 6 verses to explain what God will do for those who trust him. He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you shall take refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a buckler, and you will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. Verse 3 sets the tone for this section of Scripture by pointing out that God will deliver those who trust in him from 2 kinds of dangers. The first being the subtle trap of enemies who want to ensnare us, and he uses the description of the kind of a trap that a fowler would set to catch birds. And the second is to deliver us from the dangers of infectious disease or pestilence. Okay, there's a great story about a fellow in England, Lord Graven is his name. I'll read this to you. It's kind of cool. Okay, a nobleman was living in London, and when the plague ravaged the city in the 15th century, in order to escape the spreading pestilence, Craven determined to leave the city for his country home, as many in his social standing did. He ordered his coach, his baggage made ready, but as he was walking down one of the halls of his home, about to enter his carriage, he overheard one of his servants say to another, "I'm supposed by my lord's quitting London to avoid the plague that his God lives in the country but not in town." It was a straightforward and apparently innocent remark, but it struck Lord Craven so deeply that he canceled his journey, saying, "My God lives everywhere and can preserve me in the town as well as in the country. I will stay where I am." So he stayed in London. He helped the plague victims, and he did not catch the disease himself. It's not that all of us are guaranteed never to catch a pestilent disease or an infectious disease, but it should be our experience that we are habitually delivered from these kind of things, delivered from the traps of our enemies, delivered from infectious and pestilent diseases. So one day God has to take us home, and it's going to come in some form. But for the most part, we can walk trusting God that we're going to be okay because he is our refuge and our fortress. Much of what we see in the next section, verses 9 to 11, much of what we've seen before. No harm will befall us, no danger will come near our tent. But there's a few new elements too, and one of them is it's the conditional side of it. The individual must make the Most High God his dwelling place. This is not just, I believe in God. No, this is dwelling in God. This is resting in God continually. It is that person whom no evil will be allowed to befall. It is that person whom no plague shall come near your tent. And then he goes on to say that he'll actually command his angels concerning us to guard us in all our ways. On their hands they will bear us up, lest we strike our foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you'll trample underfoot. Oh my gosh, these are tremendous promises. Now, don't be mistaken. Eventually, the Lord is going to take us home, and that could come through an infectious disease. It could come through the plot of our enemies. But our experience should tell us that he habitually delivers us from these sorts of things. In these last 3 verses, we see a little shift. Previously, the pronouns were always you, for he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler. He will cover you with his pinions. You will not fear the terror of the night. Well, that pronoun switches now to I. God is now going to validate his promises, and he says to us, because we hold fast to him in love, he says, I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. When he calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. So basically, there's 3 promises that God has for those who trust him. The first is that there is protection from danger. I will protect him because he knows my name. I will protect him because he has chosen me. I will protect him because I have chosen him. I will protect him because he is mine. When he calls to me, I will answer him. When he is in trouble, I will be with him. And that's the second one, the answer for the one who is in trouble and prays to God about it. That's a great blessing. When I get in trouble, and I do, if I pray to God, if I call out to him, he will answer me. He will come and protect me in trouble. He will bring me out of that trouble. And finally, the third one, he promises long life and salvation for the one who seeks God's satisfaction. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. That's Psalm 91. That is one of the most wonderful psalms in all of the Psalter, no doubt about it. He is our refuge and our fortress. He will protect us. He will keep us. All of us who dwell in the shelter of the Most High and the shadow of the Almighty. Wow. What a great blessing to know these things. This is a time that is really amazing what's going on in our world today. And we have this message from God to help us not to fear, but to walk upright before him, glorifying his name, and living as creatures who are to the praise of his glory.